I went in 2000, the year 2000, and I went to do a story on and with Larry and his family. And prior to that, many stories have been written in the news and various magazines about Larry Hoover and the Gangster Disciples and Folk Nation and all that stuff, but never with the participation of Larry and his family. During that visit, I met with Larry's then representative, Gatorman Bradley.
Be they BD, be they GD, be they Stone, be they Lord. They all one nation, in peace.
Hey!
So at this, if you have any questions, I want to ask them to the best of my ability.
Mr. Bradley, what?
Took me over to meet the young brothers over at the Ickes, which is was a large project in Chicago. And I went into the projects and kicked it with the cats, and sat. And first of all, when we got there, it was huge. First of all, it's huge projects, and when we walked in the building, there were no lights in the halls. We were on like the second or third floor, and we walked in, and we walked up to the door, and in front of the door was one of those collapsing metal gates that you find back in the days used to be in front of stores. And this gate, he took the gate and he pushed it back. This is on the outside in the hall in front of the door of the apartment. So I stopped and I looked and I said, what would keep somebody from closing this door, this gate, putting a lock on it, because you could lock it from the outside, and setting it on fire? And he said, oh, they already did that. Now the hall doesn't have any lights. So when he opened the door and the light from inside the apartment came out, I looked up and I could see the door had been burnt. It was char all of the door, the frame, on the ceiling. And I said, so what would prevent them from coming back? He said, oh, they're not coming back. I believed him. We went inside. They had a little studio set up in there, whatever, hoods, projects. And, it was real. It was very real. Good brothers, good young brothers. They were young GDs. And we sat, we chopped it up, and we built.
Yeah, see these folks over here, GDs, they run it over here, you know what I'm saying? The folks, they run it. Yeah.
In there, I did an interview on them. This was the issue that I did, right? This was issue number 3. This is me sitting there talking to, but, they were very forthright. They were very straight, they weren't pulling no punches. They weren't trying to be political, There were no publicists were involved. It was just like, real talk. They were shooting straight, and they were giving up like it was.
He just got.
That's one example of what crack cocaine, or Ready Rock, as it's called out here on the street, can do to you.
This is just after they tell me about this Nation's Day thing, all right? So I say, were there other types of nation taxes? And he said, yeah, on parties. If there was a folks party going on somewhere in the city, every other party had to shut down. If they found out afterwards that somebody had a party, the GDs would come for taxes the next day, if not the same night. When they, the folks, was throwing something, you had to shut down. Simple as that. They took attendance so they knew who showed up and who didn't. So I asked them, how did they take attendance? He said, they used the people they had in play, big hats, niggas like some of the coordinators. Hoover had count of everybody. That was folks. Everybody that was folks. So that's all, all the organizations that I listed. And the coordinator would have all the members sign in after they paid. When the party was over, the coordinator and the treasurer would match the membership lists with the attendance list. If your ass was on the membership list and you came to the party but didn't sign in, or you just didn't come at all, they would come to your block or maybe even your house and give you a mouth shot. If you couldn't take that mouth shot, you was paying that fine. It didn't matter how bad you was, cause they coming deep with 100 niggas. Project niggas too. Project niggas is a special type of name, especially in Chicago. So I say, coordinators and treasurers, what other ranks were there? He says, from the bottom up, it worked like this. First, you had your soldiers. Those are niggas on the street. Then you had your treasurer and chief of security and a coordinator for each block who ran, coordinators ran the block, and then above them, you had the regents who ran the whole neighborhood. So each of them had a few coordinators responsible to them. The regents had to report to the governors though. The governors ran entire sections of the city like South Side, West Side, shit like that. The governors had to answer to the board members, and only the board members would speak directly to Hoover, the chairman of the board. So that's where that whole concept, the chairman of the board, comes from. Larry Hoover, known as King of Kings, the chairman. You know, you've heard the conversations, some of the conversations that the brother Jay Prince has shared over the years. And, you know, Larry's known as the chairman, you know. It's deep. We're gonna go deeper.
Well, the truth is, niggas in the street gotta get together all over the nation. I'm talking, we gotta get together in Chicago, we gotta get together in LA, we gotta get together in Houston, we gotta get together in New York, we gotta get together in Detroit. Niggas got to get together all over this nation. I'm talking about not the regular people in the street. I'm talking about street niggas. I'm talking about niggas that call themselves gangsters. Real gangsters go to the polls. And see, they scared of me because I'm trying to whip this living giant.
Larry Hoover was a very powerful, very influential, even after he went to prison. I mean, the GDs, most of their growth occurred, 90% of their growth occurred after he left and while he was in prison, you know.
And also, Larry Hoover is an example of a man that was turning his life around. And as soon as he tried to turn his life around, they hit him with 6 life sentences. So I believe you say don't tear down the statues. Larry Hoover is a living statue. He's a beacon.
His greatest threat was the fact that he had become political. The fact that he had mobilized all the projects, and using his influence, using the organizational influence, he started making people behave in a more politically conscious manner. Started making everybody register to vote. If you were voting age, you had to register to vote. You had to. And they had these buses that would go around all the projects and pick everybody up to go vote. This was in local elections. You know, this was what 21st Century Vote was about. It was about consolidating the power. That's what made Larry the threat that he was. The fact that he was a very powerful leader of a bunch of people involved in criminal activity was what it was.
Street gangs is a fact. They've been a part of society, this society, since the early 1900s, and they're a fact that you can't get around them.
But for the government to leverage its resources in the way that it did to make certain that he'd never get out of prison, and to even make certain that he be put in prison, which, you know, they put him in the federal prison at maximum security, where he would be locked down for 23 hours a day, which is in Florence ADX, what they call hell on earth, right? It's where they had Young GDs in the Unabomber, and the first guy that supposedly tried to blow up the World Trade Center. You know, that's where they put terrorists and so forth. They got Pistol Pete is there. And the whole thing was to disconnect him from the streets so that the streets wouldn't have that sense of leadership. The majority of the people who followed Larry Hoover, you know, in terms of doing whatever they were doing, they never actually saw him. They never actually heard his words and didn't speak to him on the phone. None of that. A lot of what they were doing that was given to them as his word and his directive was coming through subordinates that a lot of them hadn't actually come into contact with either. You know, I'm talking about soldiers and so forth. The people who were actually taking the actions on the street. The majority of them, they were just doing what they thought that Larry wanted them to do. And this degree of influence, even from prison, is what made him the biggest threat, you know, to the government and to the status quo.
Hoover's visitors were unknowingly wearing on their person as they conversed with him inside the prison. They bugged the visitor ID badges worn by Hoover's lieutenants and listened to months and months of conversations in late '93, collected an infinity of incriminating discussions about the day-to-day operations of the organization.